Oh, pardon me. You caught me with my mouth full. See, I made this pan of brownies to share with you, and I wouldn't feel right recommending a recipe if I hadn't actually tried the product, so I had to try it out before we go through this video. These brownies are special, but not in the way that you're thinking. These brownies have a couple of mystery ingredients. So today I'm going to talk about those mystery ingredients and what it's like to cook with essential oils. And I'm going to share with you a cozy mystery novel that I just finished. So if you're into cooking with essential oils and cozy mysteries, stick around and see what we have. Welcome back to the Basement Book Drop. I'm Rutherford Rankin, your well-oiled and well-read host. And today we are baking up something scrumptious for your eating and reading pleasure. So if you are hungry for more, let's get started with a book review. So for today's book review, I decided to mix it up just a little bit. And today I'm going to review a book that's by a self-published author. Now you might be wondering why I would do that when there's so many big books out there by the big 5 publishers. Well, variety is the spice of life, and every book deserves a chance to flavor our reading tastes. I've actually written 3 books, so I know the hard work that goes into writing a book, and when you're a self-published author, that becomes an even bigger task. It doesn't just end with that last line that you've written and the revisions that you do. When you're a self-published author, you're responsible for the marketing of your book, engaging those readers, getting reviews, and selling copies. And you're kind of at a disadvantage if you don't have the publisher behind you because you miss out on that experience that they have and the connections they have with media and those types of things that make a book successful. So if I can help a self-published author promote their work, I'm more than happy to do so. So with that in mind, I scoured various online forums. I was hungry for a self-published book that would meet my tastes. And I came up on a Reddit forum where authors are trying to get reviewers for their books. And I saw a post by an author named Hannah R. Kurz. And she was promoting her self-published cozy mystery novel. And it's called Prove It, Murder in the Mix. So this book centers around Stephanie Wu, a woman who's a new mother, and the building that she lives in. So on the first floor of the building is a bakery called the Likeable Daisy. And Stephanie actually lives above that in one of the apartments in the building. And she becomes a regular customer of that bakery. She's initially drawn to it by the aromas that waft up into her apartment. And then when she starts going there, she becomes friends with the owner, Samid, and the head baker named Charlotte. And so she just becomes a regular customer there. It's convenient, it's right downstairs. And she really enjoys their coffee and their baked goods. Things actually take a pretty dark turn when Samid ends up dead in the bakery in what looks like it's possibly a mishap with one of the industrial mixers. But Stephanie isn't quite convinced that that's what happened, and so she goes about trying to prove that there was nefarious activity going on. And with the end of her maternity leave quickly approaching, Stephanie has to quickly try to piece together the details that make her doubt that this was an accident. And in order to figure out who killed Samid and how they did it and why they did it, she actually has to piece together quite a few clues and rule people out. And another thing that she has to do is she has to convince Samid's family to break from Islamic tradition and actually have an autopsy performed. So as the book progresses, Stephanie is kind of balancing, new motherhood with her infant and trying to piece together all of these clues. Self-published books can really run the gamut as far as quality. They can be really bad, they can be really good. In the case of this book, I really enjoyed it. Stephanie as a character was very relatable. She seemed like a typical normal person. And she went about investigating this using techniques that the everyday person would actually have access to. The thing with some cozy mysteries is the characters are, researching stuff that you and I would not have access to. And so I like that in this book, the author really took it upon herself to make sure that as Stephanie is investigating this crime, she's actually using resources that anybody could really get to. This book really had me second guessing myself the entire time. There were several times in the story that I was certain I had figured out who killed Samid, why they did it, and then the author would throw in something that just completely debunked my theory. And so it really was one of those books where you really don't figure out who it is until they tell you who it is. But then at the same time, I realized that the author did a wonderful job of sprinkling those clues throughout the book that you really had to pay attention to that were giving things away. They were so subtle that you just didn't even notice until you figured out who did it, and then it was sort of obvious. And so if I was to go back and read it a second time, I would probably say, yeah, she was trying to show me there that this person was doing this, or that something was strange with this person. And so I really appreciated that, because it wasn't one of those books that was predictable, where you already figured out who did it from the beginning. This really was one of those books where you just are bouncing around from person to person that you think did it, and then in the end, you were wrong the entire time. My only criticism of the book, and it's a really minor one, is that in 1 to 2 instances per chapter, there were cases of maybe minor misspellings or grammatical errors. If a proofreader had gone through it one last time, they probably would have caught those small errors. It really did not distract from a great story, though. I really didn't notice it that much, except with my critical eye. And so don't let that distract from the story if you choose to read this book. I will say that while I was researching the book, I did come across a couple of reviews where the reviewers mentioned that there were a couple of scenes or characters who weren't pertinent to the story that were included, that seemed like they were just filler. I'll say this about that. When I researched the author and read a little more about the book, I realized that this author is trying to start a series called A Likeable Daisy Mystery Series. And so I feel like, and I'm making an assumption here, but I feel like some of those characters and scenes that were in this book may pop up in later books and maybe become the plot of those books. So if you happen to read this book and you think, wow, this character doesn't really make sense, like, why are they there? Just know that eventually this author has plans to expand the series and that those may come up later. If you're a fan of cozy mysteries or just mysteries in general, I do highly recommend this book. It's a really good story. Just overlook, some of the spelling and grammatical errors. Focus on the story because it is a really good one. If you are interested in reading this book, I will leave a link in the description. I would also like to add, when you're looking for new books to read, don't discount a book just because it's self-published. There is a lot of variety out there in self-published work. Some are good, some are bad. I've read self-published books that I think, yeah, this probably shouldn't have been, even printed. And then there's others where I'm like, I don't know why a publisher would pass this up. So don't discount a book and judge it based on the fact that it's a self-published book. There are some great self-published books out there, so give them a chance. I also want to just give a shout out to Hannah R. Kurz. Keep up the great work. I really enjoyed this story. Thank you for mixing it up for us. Speaking of mixing things up, today's essential oil topic, we're going to talk about cooking with essential oils. So a lot of the talk about essential oils kind of focuses on aromatherapy and the health benefits and using them to clean around your house. But did you know that you can cook with essential oils too? You can, and today that's what we're going to talk about. And I'm going to give you an example of something that I just made with essential oils. Now I do want to preface this by making it clear that I am using doTerra brand essential oils. The reason that I'm using doTerra brand is because they are certified pure therapeutic grade, and I know that they are quality oils. When you're using oils in your cooking, the quality becomes so much more important because you're actually consuming the oils. So while I do recommend using doTerra oils because that is a brand that I know their quality is high, if you're using other brands, please do your research and make sure that the oils you're using are safe to consume, number one, and that they are quality oils from that distributor. If you are using doTerra essential oils and you're wondering if an oil is safe to consume, you can tell very quickly just by looking at the label. All of the labels of the consumable oils are going to have this nutrition facts on the label. I don't know if you can see it, but it will have a nutrition facts label on there. And so that is how you know that that oil is safe to consume. If the oil from doTerra does not have that nutrition facts, it may not be safe to consume. It may be, but I wouldn't trust it without that nutrition facts because some oils are not meant to be consumed at all. So just check the label on your doTerra oils. If it has that nutrition facts label, you should be okay to use that in your cooking. When it comes to cooking with essential oils, the possibilities are just like tremendously diverse. There are so many things you can do with it. There are so many ways that you can add a punch of flavor with essential oils, or you can create a really unique flavor combination that maybe is unexpected. One word of caution that I would give you regarding cooking with essential oils is that a little bit goes a very long way. So essential oils are very concentrated versions of the plants and spices that they come from. And so just make sure that when you're first getting started, use a very tiny amount until you understand how the oils are working in the food. If you just go in there and start adding drops and drops and drops of an oil, you're going to quickly overwhelm your dish and probably ruin it. So start very small, experiment with it, and then find out what works for you and the dishes that you're making. The reason I tell you this is because I made a big mistake when I first started cooking with essential oils. I added about 5 drops of black pepper oil to 1 skillet of ground turkey meat. That was one very spicy meal, and now I know that at most you should add 1 drop of black pepper, but most of the time it's a lot less than that. So if you are making something that needs less than a full drop of an essential oil, a really easy trick that my friend taught me is to take a toothpick and you just dip it into the hole on top of the bottle, get it nice and soaked with the oil, and then take the toothpick and swirl it around in whatever you're cooking. So for example, if you're adding black pepper to maybe some ground beef, just dip that black pepper into the essential oil bottle and then swirl it around in the ground beef in the skillet, and it will pick up the essence of that without being too overwhelming. So that's a really good trick for adding amounts that are less than, a full drop. Let's say maybe you need to add 2 or 3 toothpicks worth. You don't want a full drop, but you need more than just 1 toothpick. Obviously, you can't dip that toothpick that's been in the ground beef back into the bottle. Just use 3 toothpicks. You dip the first one, swirl it around, take your second toothpick, same thing. And just keep doing that until it has the amount that you want to add. Another tip with essential oils in cooking is to make sure that whatever oils you're using are going to complement that dish and that they're going to match up with the flavor. So a lot of it is common sense. You're obviously not going to add something like cumin to a banana bread, but it would be great with a savory and salty dish like taco meat. And so just kind of experiment with it, but know that there are combinations that aren't going to work, and you'll kind of be able to know that just using your common sense. One thing that I will say is don't be afraid to experiment. For example, citrus oils kind of seem like they would go with sweet dishes, but you would be amazed at the kick that you can add to a chicken dish by adding a little bit of lemon oil to that dish. It really brings out the flavor of the chicken, especially if it's like chicken that has some kind of a butter sauce. That lemon oil gives it that nice lemon flavor without too much tanginess. So you might be wondering if there are any instances where I would not recommend using essential oils in your cooking. There are a couple of instances that I would say that's the case. Number one, if you're making some kind of a traditional dish in your family that's been passed down for generations, it's probably not a great idea to change that recipe up. There's nothing worse than showing up to the family reunion with great-grandma's apple pie recipe and you've added an essential oil to it that changes the flavor, and everybody's commenting about how you used great-grandma's recipe but it tastes nothing like great-grandma's apple pie. So that might be an instance where you wouldn't want to do that. The other instance I can think of would be if you have something that you're cooking in the oven, you're roasting it for a very long time, that oil is probably going to evaporate before the dish gets done. Good example of that from my experience. On Thanksgiving, I thought it would be great to baste our turkey in a dill butter, and it was just dill oil and butter. By the time that turkey cooked for about 5 hours, the dill oil had completely cooked out of it, and so you didn't really taste the dill at all. So those are a couple of instances where I would say be careful using essential oils because either you're going to change up a recipe that people are familiar with, or you're going to cook it so long that the oil's not really going to be there at the end. I will say that if you're making something in the crock pot or the Instant Pot, that doesn't necessarily happen, even if you're cooking it for a while in there. So it's still okay to do it in those instances, but if you're roasting something in the oven for maybe more than a few hours, you're probably just not going to have that oil by the time it's done. So just a quick recap of those tips. Number 1, always check the quality of the oils that you intend to use. Number 2, don't overdo it. A little bit goes a long way with essential oils. Number 3, make sure that the flavors that you're adding through essential oils are going to complement the dish. And number 4, make sure that whatever you're adding isn't going to change up the recipe too much to make it unrecognizable, or is going to go away if you have a really long cooking time. When it comes to using essential oils in your cooking, there are really 3 categories of oils that you'll probably use the most often. Those are herbs and spices, which we have here, citruses, and mints. So herbs and spices can be pretty versatile, and some can be used in savory or sweet dishes, depending upon the flavor that you're going for. Some examples of herbs and spices that I have here include rosemary, lavender, ginger, clove, fennel, celery seed, basil, ylang-ylang, lemongrass, dill, black pepper, cumin, oregano, pink pepper, Roman chamomile, and cardamom. Citruses pair really well with sweet dishes. Anything with chocolate can really be punched up with citruses like wild orange or lime, which I don't have pictured here. For some reason, it makes the chocolate flavor stand out a bit more for me, and you also get that nice hint of citrus. But citrus is not limited to sweet dishes. There are a lot of savory dishes that you can add some nice lemony flavor to with a drop of lemon, especially chicken dishes that have butter in them. Lemon is a very nice combination for those. So just some examples of citruses that I have here. We have clementine, grapefruit, tangerine, lemon, litsea, wild orange, red mandarin, kumquat, and bergamot. Now there are more citrus oils available from doTerra than what I have here. These are just the citrus oils that I happen to have on hand. So here we have a couple of examples of mints. Now because the mints tend to be pretty strong in flavor, you'll want to use them somewhat sparingly in your recipes. And this is where that toothpick trick comes in really handy. Like you could add a full drop of peppermint to a dish if you want the mint flavor to really stand out and you want that peppermint to be the highlight of the dish. But if you really want it to be subtle, use the toothpick method to add just a tiny amount. Finally, we have here the 3 oils that are in the doTerra Cuisine Blend collection. So doTerra has actually made cooking with essential oils a little bit easier. During the holiday season, they introduced the doTerra Cuisine Blend collection. And this collection comes with 3 oil blends. It's Italian, Mexican, and tropical. These blends are specially selected for those types of dishes. So like the Italian is great in pasta sauces, the Mexican blend is great in tacos, enchiladas, that type of thing. And the tropical blend is recommended for use with fish or smoothies or something that you would want that tropical flavor in. The cuisine blend is actually sold out right now as I'm filming this, and I'm not actually sure if it's intended to be available after the holiday season, but I will leave a link in the description for it, just in hopes that doTerra will keep it as a permanent product. So if you happen to go on there and it's available, get it while you can. Don't be afraid to experiment with different combinations of oils in your dishes. I've made some really great marinades for meat that included basil and rosemary with the other ingredients. I almost always add cumin and black pepper to my taco meat. And lemon is a really good substitute for adding lemon flavor at those times when you need like lemon juice, but you don't have any on hand. You can get that lemon flavor from the lemon oil. There are a few other suggestions I've seen, but I have not yet tried. One of those is adding lavender to your cookies and brownies, adding cardamom and clove to banana bread. And then I have heard that a drop of celery seed in your broths can really bring out that flavor. You actually can even make or enhance your tea. So if you add just a drop of Roman chamomile to regular tea, you can get a nice herbal refreshing tea from that. Or if you wanted to make a peppermint tea, you can actually use your peppermint oil and you just swirl a toothpick in hot water in a mug that you have dipped into the peppermint. Don't add a full drop of peppermint or you're going to get a really overwhelming peppermint tea. But if you just dip that toothpick in the peppermint and swirl it around in the hot water, you will have a nice peppermint tea. Hopefully all of this cooking talk has worked up an appetite for you. So to close out today's episode, I wanted to go ahead and share those mystery ingredients that I was talking about in the brownies that I was eating at the beginning of the video. So if you're anything like me, you probably make a lot of things from boxed mixes, things like cakes and brownies. For me, it's just easier to make it from a box mix instead of trying to gather the dozen ingredients that I need to make it from scratch that I probably don't have on hand anyway. When I make things from a boxed mix though, I tend to change it up and add my own little flair to it. So if I'm making brownies, I might add M&Ms or walnuts to it. If I'm making a cake, I might throw chocolate chips into the batter, things like that. Boxed mixes are a great way to experiment with essential oils because in most cases you're going to know what that product's going to taste like at the end because it's probably something that you've eaten before. And so you'll know what flavors and what oils to use to complement that flavor. So without any further ado, I present to you my gooey fudge and wild orange brownies. So I pretty much just followed the recipe that was on the box, but then I changed it up at the end and I added 1 drop of doTerra wild orange and just a smidge of peppermint. So it tastes a little bit like those chocolate oranges that you get around Christmas time. The orange really brings out the chocolate flavor though. The other thing that I did, earlier in the week, I made a dulce de leche in my Instant Pot, so homemade dulce de leche. So I did add some of that to make it gooier, if gooier is a word. And so it just made it a nice gooey fudge brownie. They kind of fall apart, so they're a little too gooey, but they would be great with some vanilla ice cream. Hopefully you enjoy watching this recipe. So that is all there is to it. Hopefully you enjoyed watching that recipe, and hopefully you enjoyed the rest of today's episode. I do highly recommend that you check out the book Prove It, Murder in the Mix by Hannah R. Kurz. I will leave a link in the description for that. If you are interested in purchasing any of the oils that I have mentioned in this episode, I will leave links in the description to purchase those. I do have a pan of brownies upstairs that are calling my name, that are not going to eat themselves. So it is time for me to say stay safe, stay sane, and stay you, and we will catch you the next time on the Basement Book Drop.